Picture the scene. You are on an airplane suspended at 30,000 feet, traversing a sea of soft white clouds. The cabin is a microcosm of normality. The constant hum of the engines, the recirculated air conditioning with its aseptic smell, the soft click of a seatbelt being adjusted. Someone is reading a book. A child is watching a cartoon on a tablet. The passenger next to you is sleeping with their mouth slightly open. Everything is predictable, controlled, almost monotonous. Then a sound breaks this tranquility. It's the familiar ding, followed by a slight static crackle. The pilot switches on the microphone, and his calm professional voice fills the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, passengers and crew, this is your captain speaking. We are approaching an area of instability. We will be experiencing some turbulence for the next few minutes. Please remain seated with your seatbelts securely fastened. In that exact instant, something fundamental changes inside you. It's not just the sound of the pilot's voice. It's a biochemical cascade, a silent revolution that occurs in milliseconds. Your heart, which was beating at a calm rhythm, now skyrockets, pounding against your ribs like a war drum. Your muscles, once relaxed, contract involuntarily. Your hands grip the armrests, your knuckles turning white. Your breathing, once deep and regular, becomes short and shallow, as if the cabin air has suddenly grown thin. You are seated, perfectly safe, strapped into the most secure seat in the world, but your mind, your body, are already in full survival mode, as if the simple word turbulence were a trigger, a key that unlocks the cage of a primal, irrational fear. Now let's rewind the clock. Imagine that, at this very same time, you are in a completely different setting. You are driving on any given road, perhaps a busy highway, or a winding country lane. The radio is playing your favorite song. The windows are down and the wind is messing up your hair. You are in control, hands on the wheel, making dozens of micro-decisions every minute, accelerating, braking, changing lanes, dodging a pothole. There is no announcement, no alert, not a hint of fear, no sign of panic courses through your body. But herein lies the great and disconcerting contradiction. From a purely statistical and logical standpoint, you are at a drastically higher risk inside that car than inside that airplane. The probability of being in a fatal car accident is immensely greater than that of being in a plane crash. And yet, in the airplane you feel the chilling fear. In the car you feel at most the boredom of traffic. This has absolutely nothing to do with logic. It has to do with the architecture of your brain, because fear is not a rational response. It is an automatic reaction, an ancestral echo from a time when danger was immediate and physical. It is your attention being violently hijacked by a single, overwhelming idea: danger. And this is precisely where our journey begins. The way you perceive reality doesn't just depend on what your eyes see. It depends fundamentally on where your attention decides to shine its light. It's like being in a dark room with a flashlight. The entire room exists, but you only perceive what the beam of light reveals. In the 19th century, the German scientist Hermann von Helmholtz, a polymath whose contributions ranged from physics to physiology, conducted an experiment of brilliant simplicity that opened the doors to understanding how you see the world. He set up a black screen in a dark room and asked a volunteer to fix their gaze on a small point in the center. Then, for a fraction of a second, he would flash letters in different parts of the screen. What he discovered was fascinating. Even without moving their eyes a single millimeter, participants could direct their attention to where the letters were going to appear and identify them. This proved something revolutionary. The focus of your vision, where your eyes are pointing, and the focus of your attention, what your mind is processing, are two distinct and separable things. You can stare at one point while paying attention to something else entirely. Your attention is a mental spotlight, independent of your eyeballs. This small detail, this separation between seeing and perceiving, explains almost everything that happens in your mind when you feel fear, because you don't process the totality of the world around you equally and democratically. That would be impossible, a paralyzing sensory overload. Instead, you filter, you choose. Or to be more precise, your brain chooses for you, using criteria etched by millions of years of evolution. Donald Broadbent, one of the pioneers of British experimental psychology, formalized this idea in his filter theory in the 1950s. He proposed that when you are surrounded by an infinity of stimuli, sounds, images, smells, sensations, your brain acts as a strict gatekeeper, First, it superficially processes the physical aspects of everything: the pitch of a voice, the speed of a movement, the color of an object. Then, based on this raw data, it decides what is important enough to pass through the attentional bottleneck and reach your consciousness. Whatever doesn't pass through the filter, for all practical purposes, simply vanishes from your perception. Think about when you are at a party or a crowded bar. The environment is a cacophony of stimuli. Dozens of voices talking at once, the sound of music, the clinking of glasses, people walking by. Yet you can focus on a single conversation, on the voice of the person in front of you. It's not because the other conversations have magically disappeared. It's because your brain has filtered them out, demoting them to meaningless background noise. Now imagine that in the midst of all that noise, someone shouts your name, even if the voice comes from far away. Even if you are distracted and have your back turned, you hear it instantly. Why? Because certain stimuli have a VIP pass to get through the filter. And the criteria for this pass are, primarily, anything involving emotion, imminent danger, or personal identity. Your name is one of those triggers. The word fire is another. And in an airplane, the word turbulence is a super stimulus. The psychologist Anne Treisman refined this idea. She argued that the brain doesn't completely block out what seems irrelevant. Instead, it merely attenuates it, as if turning down the volume on everything that isn't a priority. The information is still there, at a low level of processing, waiting for a trigger. If something is strong enough, a familiar word, an alarm sound, a sudden movement, it breaks through this weakened filter like a lightning bolt and invades your consciousness. This is how your attention works, fragile, selective, and deeply vulnerable to emotional hijackings. To demonstrate just how blind this focus can make us, psychologists Christopher Chabris and Daniel Simons created an experiment that became a world-renowned classic, The Invisible Gorilla. The video shows two groups of young people, one team in white and one in black, passing a basketball. Your task as a viewer is simple and clear. Count how many passes the team in white makes. Most people concentrate on the task and get the count right. But at the end of the video comes the surprising question: did you see the gorilla? About half of the participants reply, "What gorilla?" They fail to see a person in a full gorilla costume walk into the middle of the scene, beat their chest and slowly walk off. And it's not a hidden or subtle figure. It's a massive gorilla, right in the center of the action, passing before their very eyes for 9 seconds. The experiment proves irrefutably that when your attention is intensely focused on one thing, you become functionally blind to everything else, no matter how obvious. You think you see the whole world, but in reality, you only see the narrow sliver your mind allows. This dynamic is masterfully explained by the psychologist and Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman in his theory of two modes of thought, System 1 and System 2. System 1 is your fast-thinking mode. It is instinctive, intuitive, automatic, and emotional. It operates effortlessly and is always on. It's the system that solves 2 plus 2, understands a simple sentence, and dodges an object flying toward you. It acts before you even realize you're thinking. It is System 1 that reacts viscerally when you hear the word turbulence. System 2, on the other hand, is your slow-thinking mode. It is analytical, logical, rational, and deliberate, but terribly lazy and tiring. It requires energy, focus, and conscious effort. It's the system you use to solve a complex math problem, like 17x24, to fill out a tax form, or to learn how to drive. Operating System 2 is like driving in the dark with low beams on an unfamiliar road. You can see, but the mental effort quickly exhausts you. The human brain, for the sake of sheer energy efficiency, prefers the shortcut. It prefers the fast, cheap thinking of System 1. And when your slow-thinking System 2 is tired, stressed, or overloaded, a phenomenon called ego depletion occurs. It's as if the battery of your rational brain is low. In this state, you simply stop analyzing and revert to reacting instinctively. Your mind shuts down reason to conserve energy, and it is in this exact moment of cognitive vulnerability that fear takes control. Because fear for the brain is cheap. It's instantaneous. It doesn't ask for an explanation, require calculation, or consume energy. When you are on an airplane and hear the word turbulence, your System 1 instantly accesses a vast archive of memories, news reports, movie scenes, and accident accounts. In milliseconds, it constructs a vivid and terrifying internal story of danger. And even if you try to activate your System 2 to convince yourself with statistics and logic that you are safe, that logic always arrives too late. The emotion has already taken up all the space. The visceral reaction has already happened, Now think honestly about this. How many times in your life have you seen a newspaper headline or a TV report about a plane that took off and landed safely? None. Millions of flights do this every day, in absolute silence. But how many times have you heard, read, or watched reports about plane crashes? Countless times. The media doesn't control what you think, but it is incredibly effective at controlling what you think about. It decides where to place the spotlight of collective attention, and, as you learned from Helmholtz, your individual attention goes where the light shines. Agenda setting theory, created by Maxwell McCombs and Donald Shaw, explains exactly this. The media doesn't tell us what to believe, but it determines which topics are important enough to deserve our attention. When a plane crashes, the whole world talks about it. The images are dramatic, the stories are tragic, the interviews are emotional. The headlines are repeated for days, weeks, and so inside your mind, the image associated with the word airplane is not one of safe routine, but of exceptional tragedy. The more this image is repeated, the stronger and more accessible it becomes in your memory. Your intuition, System 1, records this emotional association. The emotion fixes the memory. The logic comes last, if it comes at all. This is what Kahneman would call the availability heuristic. We judge the probability of an event not by its actual frequency, but by the ease with which we can recall an example. And examples of air disasters are very easy to recall. You are not afraid of flying. You are afraid of the narrative about flying that has been imprinted on your attention. Fear is not born from real statistical danger. It is born from that which has received enough light to dominate your focus. And there is something even more profound in all of this. Most people live under the illusion that they control their own attention. We believe we are the masters of our focus. But in truth, most of the time, our attention is steered by external stimuli, by phone notifications, by newspaper headlines, by trigger words, by shocking images, steered by the way our minds have been programmed to filter and prioritize threats. The question, therefore, is not just, what am I focusing on? The real and much more powerful question is, who or what is deciding where my attention goes right now? And this is precisely where the key lies to changing how you experience fear. Because if your attention shapes your perception of reality, then deliberately shifting the focus of your attention changes your subjective reality. When you understand that fear is, in large part, an automatic reflex of selective attention being hijacked by a prefabricated narrative, it begins to lose its power. It ceases to be an absolute terrifying monster, and becomes merely a predictable and even slightly clumsy mechanism of the human brain. The next time you are on a plane and hear the word turbulence, observe the automatic reaction. Feel your heart race. Feel your muscles contract. But instead of surrendering to this current, take a deep breath. Remember the invisible gorilla. Remember that your brain is not showing you the complete reality. It is showing you a snippet, a clip filtered and edited by a threat bias. And that clip can be changed. You can consciously choose not to feed the internal story that fear is trying to build. You can, with practice and awareness, direct the spotlight of your attention elsewhere. Focus on your breath. Focus on the music in your headphones. Focus on the clouds outside, on their indifferent beauty. Focus on the conversation with the person next to you. And when you do that, something powerful happens. The narrative of panic loses its control over you. Because in the end, it's not the turbulence that scares you. It's not the airplane. It's not the statistics. It's not the real danger. It's your own mind, with its evolutionary filters, its cognitive biases, and its selectively amplified memories. The fear isn't out there in the thin air. It's in here, in the architecture of your attention. Changing your focus changes everything.